Okay, fabulous. I have been looking forward to this call so much, I have to tell you. Andrew, you reached out to me, and this is Andrew Bridgeman. I will give you my normal introduction throughout the call, but I just want to start with when you reached out to me and said I'd be interested in you doing my book and everything, I was prepared to look it up and find that it was like, a 30-minute nonfiction about Bitcoin. Because usually when writers reach out, a lot of times that's what you get, or you get, there's a lot of scams out there and everything. So I do have writers reach out through the website, but the rule is generally that they're not your favorite kind of book. When I saw your book on Amazon, I think it did occur to me that maybe I should have held off and not looked that eager, because I think I responded before you had even hit the send button on the original email saying, "Oh my God."
That was so fantastic to have found you. And I wish I could remember exactly what path led me there, but having a great, like your website was amazing.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I had a couple auditions. I had auditioned a couple people, um, and they were the guys, and they were great. And they did the gritty FBI veteran man fantastic. But it kind of felt like the main character, who is Emma Noble, our protagonist, that either they were working on a sexy FBI agent, or kind of a really demure. Like it just wasn't right. And as soon as I heard you do it, I'm like, oh my god, Daniela
Oh,
is
thank you.
exactly who I've been looking for. So, and that's the response that I've gotten from everyone that has gotten the audiobook, and it's been doing really well. So I thank you for it.
Thank you so much. Well, this brings me to a couple of questions um, that I've been dying to ask you
Hmm.
since reading your book. But first, I'd like to start with 10-year-old Andrew.
Okay.
What was like a day in your life? What were you hoping for? Did you have dreams? Were you just living in the moment? Did you have like a big passion or a hobby? Bring us into 10-year-old Andrew's head.
I think at 10, those were my, I'm going to play outfield for the Red Sox years.
Wow.
I was going to be a pro athlete, and I think that probably from the age of 10 to maybe 12, every night I went to bed daydreaming about the home run that I would hit in the World Series. And, my life revolved around sports. And that was before reality told me that under no circumstances do you have the the ability to play high school baseball, let alone. But at the time, I was in all things a dreamer for sure.
But you played rugby. You played rugby and
Oh yeah, no, I did things athletically that I came at from the side eventually. So, but I think the things that I thought I was supposed to be, or that I would be good at, I wasn't good at. Um, but I opened doors that, like, I thought I was going to be make the baseball team and the basketball team in high school as a senior. I just wanted to get a letter. I knew that I wouldn't play much, but I got cut.
let's face up, you just wanted to pull the girls.
Well, I that Andy wasn't getting anything there either. Um, but I got cut from both teams, and then I tried out for track, and I broke the school record in a high jumper. So things
Wow.
like that, it's kind of informed me, like, um, sometimes what you think you're supposed to be and what you might be inclined to, like, you might have a talent for, are not the same things, and you got to search
You
around for
won't
it a little
always
bit.
get what you want, but you'll get what you need.
Exactly. And the rugby thing that was just that was just fun, and that was 15 years of too much drinking and too much violence, and But I enjoyed every bit of it. It was a blast. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a weird question. I recently watched an American TV series, and I've been away for a very long time. So, and also my father was Italian, so we spent half a year there, half a year in America.
Mm.
So I always had that as my excuse for why like I didn't have like the total American family. So but one thing in American culture, I see it, but I'm wondering if you've ever known anyone that's done this or if your family's done this or anyone. And I watched this TV series called Parenthood, I think it was called. Very upsetting. Found it very upsetting. They're trying to get the drama make you cry every single time. But I watched this
Yeah.
American
Yeah.
TV series and they kept playing the whole family on holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, would go out in the yard and play football and play sports together. Do you know any American families that did that? Or did you do, is that a real thing? Or did they just do that to make us feel bad that we
No,
didn't do it?
that is that Kennedy cliche of the Kennedys at Thanksgiving, playing tag football together. I believe. I think that's a carryover. But no, we didn't do that. We
Okay.
ate a lot and watched football, and then fell asleep by halftime. Yeah.
And you're honestly the sportiest person I know, so I will take your word for it. And that because I think I mispronounced a famous sports figure in the book. And I was like, oh yeah, I have to face up. I don't have a clue. I wouldn't even know what sport it was.
No, no.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna pull you back. So you tell me about a pivot point in your life because we all go from, being the dreamer, the child, you know, things are okay until a certain point, and then we come up against life's inevitable obstacles. And I'm really fascinated by and it comes at different times for everyone. I think I've only met one person that said they'd never come up against an obstacle. But I think the obstacles are the way into the most interesting parts of us. And I'm wondering what obstacle you first encountered and how you dealt with it and what you learned from how you dealt with it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's hard. You should have given me these ahead of time so I just don't stumble. Um,
That would have
the
spoiled the fun.
I think the way I look at you're on one path, and the trials and everything that you kind of you're. I was not on the. Um, I was trying to be a people pleaser for an awful long time. I was really concerned about what people thought of who I was. What did I need to be able to do to prove that I was valuable? That I was, it wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what I could achieve so that people would like me, or what I could say to ingratiate myself with people. And then I think it was I was probably about 30 and just in a bad place. I'm a father, I'm a husband, and um, my trying to be a son, and at the same time it was kind of like what am I, and I
Yeah.
had to make a decision that I'm first and foremost a husband and a father, and then it was an examination of the things that gave me anxiety and the things that made me feel whole and happy, and spending a lot of time understanding what it was that made me more at ease. And a lot of that, I think we talked about in just a couple of seconds, was understanding what I have influence over and what I don't. And what people think of me is not something that that it's a valuable place to spend any of my time. You don't want to be hated. You don't want to be that guy. But as far as trying to get my self worth out of what other people think of me was kind of a dead end. So I would say at 30, it took a lot of that was kind of a watershed moment for me of maybe finding myself and then being curious. I think trying to be optimistic about that even through bad things, life's going to get better. And then also being curious about everything, and then trying to dive into places and see, experiment and see if that's something that you'd like or not. I think those were all important things that I didn't do before I was 30. I think I was locked into a path that wasn't as helpful.
So, but your book, what strikes me about your book is that, I mean, you say, oh, debut novel and everything, but were you writing your entire life? That didn't just happen. You didn't just wake up one day and write that book. I mean,
Mm.
have you been writing your entire life? I know you trained, you studied writing, but how much time have you put into writing to be able to do that? It's quite extraordinary.
Well, that's nice. I think writing was the thing that I always wanted to do. It was the only class I think in college that I couldn't wait to get there. I love the idea of building a world and having complete control over it. Maybe it's a God complex or whatever it is, but that idea of this is something I can create and I can have control over. Like that was fantastic. But I was also concerned that being an artist was something that was a great path to, you know,
Living under a bridge and
living
being
under a
alive.
bridge and all that stuff. So, but as far as writing goes, I never stopped writing, but it was to make sense of what was going on in my life. So it might have been um, poems. It might have been just a diary entry. It might have been a short story that was a way for me to maybe come at the problem from another angle that felt safer. So I've done a lot of that over the years, but the book, The Fortunate Son, that book took 2 years of writing two separate novels every day that I ended up throwing in the trash. So there was a lot, and I mean, probably reading 30 books on writing, and um, so there was a lot of stops and starts and fits and um, things that had to get thrown away. But I never, I mean, even throwing away a novel after spending a year on it, that sounds like a horrible thing. For that entire year, I was tracking down ideas and becoming a better writer. And it wasn't until I realized it wasn't working and threw it away. That was a bad day. But the other 364 were fine. And then you just jump back on the horse. So, um,
When you threw it
yeah.
away, did you know you were, because, and I'm saying this for other writers that could watch this, because I see so many new writers give up. And then when they give up, they not only walk away with a feeling of they failed at what they wanted to do, but they walk away with a feeling that they are a failure. And and
Mm,
and I see it. So did you, even as you were giving up all the work that you'd put in, the time, because you know how they talk about sunk costs. I think a lot of people feel, oh, I put the time in, did you know you were still going to go? When did you decide to write Fortunate Son? I mean, was there an epiphany a certain day, or was there I've always wanted to write what, I'm fascinated by what brought you to the final decision of creating this.
to write that book.
Yeah.
Well, it was a lane change. I had my favorite authors were people like Ken Follett, James Michener, a lot of those historical fiction, James Clavell. These amazing these people that wove incredible stories through about history, and that you were living in a past time, past era, and that was the author that I wanted to be. And then, so I had spent a good amount of time trying to write a historical fiction of a boy in New Hampshire. It's the 1750s, and I was doing some research at is it called an Athenaeum? The old library. There was an old library in New Hampshire that I visited, and I told the woman I was writing a book, and she said, "Oh, that's fantastic. What's it about?" And I said, "It's about this boy that lives in a log cabin in the woods in the 1750s." And she stopped me, and she's like, "Why the hell would he be in a log cabin? We've had sawmills since the 1600s." And I'm like,
Oh
"Oh boy."
gosh.
So So librarians are bad for morale. Just know that, they're not helpful. But it was, and I think it was that, realizing that that's maybe I bit off more than I could chew, and also realizing that my story wasn't going anywhere. So what I decided to do, the idea of quitting really never entered my mind because I'm very stubborn. And I told my wife I would write her a book, and it didn't matter how long it was going to take. I was going to write her a book.
I'm sorry, can we just pause a moment for people out in the
Sure.
audience? Is that not the most romantic thing on the face of the earth? That's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
yeah.
that's very
So,
romantic.
yeah. So, but I think that the problem was that I had grown, and I was able to write characters and that had meaning, and they had drive, and the dialogue was good, but the story was kind of slipping away a little bit. And I thought, if I write a thriller, I will teach myself how to narrow a plot and keep a forward momentum and pace and those kind of things. And then it was crazy. As soon as I started doing it, I realized this is what I should have been doing the entire time. That there, I can still do characters, and I can still be the writer that I want to be, but um, it's really fun tracking down a mystery or a plot or those kind of things. So I found I really enjoyed doing it, and there were a lot of iterations. When I look at that Fortunate Son, that people tell me, "Oh my gosh, it's crafted this way or that way," and don't expect this twist or that twist. It looks like it might have been like come out whole. It did not. That is my Frankenstein's monster. That people that were bad were once good, and people that were good were once bad, and that this person who is alive, they were dead originally. And I would read to my wife, and she's like, I'm so confused because yesterday this person was alive, and now they're dead, or I brought them back to life. And I'm like, just run with it. It's going to be fine. We'll figure it out. So
But that brings me to, okay, I have this weird theory, and it might be a bit woo-woo, but people know me, so just humor me. So there are movies, right, and books like La Dolce Vita. Okay, that I don't know if you've seen it, but that movie was just always going to be a movie. And I have this theory that some pieces of art are just they're going to be made. And Elizabeth Gilbert wrote that some ideas are just ideas on their own, and if you don't grab it and make it happen and make it real, then somebody else is going to grab it. The idea's got a life of its own, and your book, Fortunate Son, feels like it has a life of its own. Like you crafted it. It almost like a muse put it in your hands and trusted you with it, but it had a life. It was meant. It's what you say about suddenly you started writing this thriller. I mean,
yeah.
am I far off field with that? Because
No, it's a lot of conversions of happy accidents. And you know, but I completely agree with. I think that was that the what was the book? Big Think, Big I. What was
Big Magic, maybe?
Big Magic? Yes,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that book, and I completely agree. I there have been so many times after reading that book where I have got an idea, and then I realize that that's not my idea. Let's keep sending that along because that's for somebody else. Um, but it's funny how I look at the book now versus when I was done with it. Because when I was done, you know, I I didn't have an imagination for anything else I could do with it. So, and it was just kind of like I was I gave up. I'm like, Kath, you can here read this. I don't know if it's any good. Probably not, but here's your book. And and then as it started getting out there, it started getting good attention, and I realized that maybe it was better than what I had initially thought, and which is kind of par for the course for me. I generally think that um, I'm maybe pessimistic about what I produce originally until I've got enough data that of people that are not family members or that I'm not, paying to tell me something nice that when like so now I believe it's a good book now, but at the time I was really concerned. My biggest question to Kathy was all right, I did this thing. Does it sound like a book? She says, what do you mean? Does it sound like a book? I'm like, well, I've been reading my whole life, and but then this came out of my head. Does it seem like a book? Like that's a weird question
That's before
for,
30-year-old Andrew coming back again, going, are people gonna like me?
yeah, but I think it was also like, does this thing deserve the light of day? It goes to that. I think, when I hold,
How can you read that book and ask that question? That's what I'm thinking. It's got to be back to you and how you feel about yourself, because there's not, that book is like, you can't look at that book and not objectively see
well,
that.
I don't, I agree with you now, but I think it was that moment of, um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of the kid in there that is like, does this belong on the refrigerator or not? So yeah, but
I think you put your heart and soul into it, and
oh,
then
I
you
did.
had the moment where it was time to put your heart and soul out into the world, and it felt raw.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Yeah.
Because that book stands on its own completely. And
Oh,
I'm not
thank you.
just blowing smoke. I'm trying to, this is my new branding for 2025. I'm going to use nice language, not always say exactly what
I,
I
I,
think.
I hope you're not doing it for my benefit.
I was just about to say, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, Andrew. The book,
Okay.
the the book is I'm not. I'm not. The book in itself is extraordinary. And the
Uh,
reason I want to make such a point of that is because I do think it breaks my heart to see writers so discouraged when they start. They've done this amazing thing. They've made this brilliant, and you got over that moment, right? By
yeah.
distributing it and everything. But a lot of them, I think they get stopped at that moment. I see them and they just give up. They do a little bit of marketing. They don't know what they're doing. Did you know about marketing? Because you've done really well at that as well. I mean, did you know about that?
I have a business background, and I've had, I've owned small businesses, so it wasn't unknown. Um, this is its own beast, but that to me, I find that understanding what moves the needle and what doesn't, and what levers you have, and trying to understand them all. I find those things fascinating.
Do
So
you? Well, I hate
yeah,
them. And most of
yeah.
our audience are narrators. We all hate the business side, or a lot of us do.
No, I get it. And I know that I'm an kind of an odd duck because I do enjoy, yeah, I think it's how things work, and what makes something do well. I think the whole premise that I had, because my trajectory for this book was kind of weird, right? So I got this amazing agent who, um, has got, all these Pulitzer Prize winners and bestseller and selling authors, and she got it sold in Germany and Hungary within the first week, and it was going to be their big book for, 2021. And then they couldn't find of a U.S. publisher, coming out of COVID, debut author. I don't think they were exactly looking for what I brought to the table. There was
How
just
did you get your agent? Can I bring you back? Sorry to interrupt, but how did you get
yeah.
your agent? Did you shop around to a whole bunch of agents? Did you?
No, I had my experience of getting an agent was ridiculous, because I sent my manuscript to an editor, um, who's known for doing thrillers and has done like Greg Iles books and things like that, and he's very, very, very good. And he agreed to look at the manuscript, which I thought was a win. And I asked him before we started. I said, "Do you know any agents that you could help me, get an introduction to?" And he said he didn't know anybody. And then he read the manuscript, and he literally said, "Who do you want to work with? I know everybody." And so it
I'm
was
telling you, see, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. It's got a life of
yeah.
its own. Okay, so go ahead. I'm intrigued.
he gave me a list of probably the 10, biggest agents in New York, and kind of said, who do you want to work with? And that he would make an introduction. So we chose the literary agent who brought Angela's Ashes and Olive Kitteridge, and just has an amazing backlist of incredible authors. And she read it. So I kind of sent out one query, and she immediately jumped on it and said, this is going to be fantastic. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, we took a year and a half, a little more than that, to realize that, the U.S. market just wasn't ready for it. I thought my big hurdle was going to be to get an agent. It turns out the hurdle was to get a publisher. But as I look back on it now, that forced me to learn things that I wouldn't have learned, and it gave me insight into what happens when a book gets released that I wouldn't have had if I had just taken a check. And so I have this visibility on publishing that I wouldn't have had outside of that. And I think for a while, I kind of harbored this idea that, well, maybe if the first 2 books do well, that maybe the 3rd book, maybe I can get an agent and we can do this again. And but I think the more that I learn, the more I'm kind of happy to do it the way I'm doing it. I don't think it makes a great deal of sense if you have got my background and then kind of divest yourself from a process and hope that people will take care of you the way that you would want to take care of yourself.
Exactly. When you're already doing it well, when people are already loving it, when you've got momentum, then the decision of, oh, should I bring in a middleman and give them control and a lot of the money? I mean, I have a lot of indie authors that are quite successful at it, and they're kind of running the market at the moment. It's become a big thing, but a lot of people are afraid to go on their own because they're afraid of cost. Like, I can't afford to publish it myself. I need a publisher, but I like the way that you say that. I like the way that you put the timing on it. 2021. This isn't like I've written my book and the entire world is going to suddenly start giving me tons of cash.
If you had told me, like I told Kathy that I was going to write her a book in 2017. If you had told me, but if you had told me in 2017, all right, Andy, here's the deal. You're gonna fail at 2 books before and you're going to spend 2 years writing before you get into the 3rd book. So it'll be 3 years before.
It's rehearsal.
No, but that process. but that idea that it's going to take you 3 years to write a book, and then it's going to take 3 more years before it gets released. I don't know if I would have signed up for that. But I wouldn't. Also, now looking back, I wouldn't trade any of it, because every day, toiling at a novel that wasn't going anywhere taught me a lot of things. Not getting a U.S. publisher, and believing that my book was good enough to be out in the world, that taught me things. So there's been a lot of lessons that through adversity or through patience. But yeah, I'm happy where we are, believe me. And the 2nd book comes out in next August, which I'm very excited to announce that Daniela is going to help me out again. But
and even if I wasn't, for the record, can I say I would still be really excited just to read the thing. I can't wait.
Oh no, you're gonna. There's been a lot of joys in coming out with a debut novel, but there was an afternoon last fall where you had downloaded the book, and I had a chance to listen to my words come out of a brilliant actor's mouth. And there were times where now, believe me, there were probably 17 drafts of that. I can probably almost go through that book, by heart, but to hear you say some of those words, I was crying. I had tears in my eyes. I knew what was going to happen. And then to hear how you brought the story to life was one of the best gifts that anyone's ever given me. It was really
Thank you.
fantastic. And yeah, so that was really fun. That was really fun.
And can I say that you've just made every single narrator that's going to watch this video slightly teary-eyed, because Jonathan will attest to that, won't you, Jonathan? That it's it's the number one thing about our job that makes us happy. The number one thing. Of course, we're always rushing to get booked and get this gig and get that. But when the author is happy, it really does make it worth it. It's like the whole point. I mean,
Yeah. Well, it was so fun. We've listened to it, towing our camper in the car, the two of us, and what's funny too is that there were lines that I threw in that I smirked at as I wrote them, but that was all I gave them. When you did them, I laughed out loud, and I'm like, "Oh, that is funny." Well, she definitely saw the humor in that, where like that's a funnier line than what I meant it to be. Like it was cool. Yeah.
I never realized that, because you're writing the words, and as you're writing them, there's no way for you to know how they're going to be received. So when you listen back to us narrating them, you're hearing how your words are received
Yeah.
by someone
Yeah.
else. And it's a
Exactly.
circle.
It's wild, and I think that maybe as you're listening to auditions, that's the thing you're connecting to is, does this person that is reading this, and it might not just be the voice, but do they hear the sentences, the rhythm of a sentence? Does it sound the way as they do it, that it sounds in your head? Because you know i I think the good writing, and I'm not saying that I'm one of those, but when I read something, there's a cadence, and then there's a way that they speak, and then it flows, and you got that, innately. Yeah.
I have to say, I recently, and if there's something I wish writers understood, and I wish narrators understood this as well. I can have this conversation with you and say, thank you very much. And that's how I experienced it. And oh my God, I love this book. And I just a couple of weeks ago did an audition for a writer. I loved her, loved her, loved her work. Big fan. I'm going to read her series. We both knew I wasn't the character. I just wasn't. So, whereas the other people auditioning for your book, they might not have been the right voice for your book, but they could do another book, and I might not be the right voice, and they'd be like the perfect, do you know what I mean, voice? It's literally like, what I think what goes wrong is sometimes you like the writer so much, or the writer likes you, or they want to make it work. And so they say, let's go on with it. And then what happens there is you start the book and it's never right, because the writer really wants someone that sounds like it did in their head. And you're never going to be that voice.
Well, there's that. There's also, I think, that maybe the people that read for me heard the word thriller or suspense, and they put on their cliche, you know, long jacket and the cool hat, and did their impression of
Yeah.
a a thriller, where maybe that works a lot of times, but you know, I I'm sure every writer likes to think that they're not being derivative, that their voice is unique, and that, having somebody approach what's written there as something that, if it's meant to be a thrilling part, that it'll pop up on the page, but you don't it's not that it's something new, you know, and that's how you treated it.
It's acting from the inside out as opposed to from the outside in.
Yeah,
It's
you're
harder.
the expert. I
Yeah.
don't know how like what I think that would be fascinating to understand that process. But I will say that as I read it, you sounded like someone that was that was letting the words guide you instead of guiding the words. I guess is that how I want
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I do. I have to say, first of all, thank you very much. A lot of that comes with a lot of time and a lot of years. But I still go back to the key that if it's a character that I can understand, see, your characters I understood. I could, oh my God, I could see their motivation. I got every step, I could feel what they were feeling. But some books I can't. And still I can't. And I can't achieve that with certain books. Whereas other narrators are just like they nail. I had an audition last weekend and I kept sending it to my friends going, what's wrong with it? I really, really want this book. I should be right for this part, but I couldn't. I connected to your writing. And
to.
sometimes I don't connect to some writing. But the big key is having the confidence to say that up front. Fair enough. Our job is auditioning. And we're lucky for the audition, but it's hard because working narrators, like writers, a lot of narrators, you need the money. So, or you really, really, really want to be the right person for the book. And,
Yeah.
and it doesn't go your way. But really, I think I've gotten to such a point that I literally forget about a book the minute it's a no. I just do because I know that when I say
That's healthy.
yes,
Yeah.
it's painful. It's what you said earlier. You might not get what you want, but you get what you need. When you end up getting what you think you wanted and it wasn't meant for you, it is torture.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard when you're not right for it. The other thing is if you were auditioning men and there's a female lead, if I'm doing a dual narration with men, um, I respect all other narrators' acting choices, but I'm kind of cheeky. I do say to them, please don't make the woman too high because sometimes men tend to make everything a woman says a question mark in a really breathy way. And I'm a big thriller fan. Like I listen and I don't want the woman to sound stupid.
No. Well, and especially when you've got your protagonist is a 25-year-old, who's courageous, who's
Yeah.
green, who is trying to fight for who she is.
She's a
You don't
badass
need that. Yeah.
protagonist. You don't want her to
Yeah.
sound breathy
Right.
and stupid. I'm not saying the ones that auditioned for your book did, but I'm just saying I do think it's harder for men to sound like women narrating than for women to sound like men. Um, I'm not saying they're worse at it, but I think it's more difficult. I don't know why.
Well, you're. I don't know if everybody has the talent that you have to be able because, and I think your voice is deep. Like your voice is, you can get a lower register.
Yeah, I sound like a
You
man
know,
anyway. I always did. From the time I was 8, I'd answer the phone. Sir?
well, look where it is. Look where it got you.
Yeah. But yeah, and it's not I think they learn with times. There's some male narrators out there. Jeff Harding is like he does thrillers and there's some male narrators out there that you wouldn't know the difference. You completely forget.
Mhm.
Johnny Heller, Jeff Harding, there's some amazing male
Yeah.
narrators out there. I think it just comes down to the right books come for you.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how this, I did community theater, so I'm kind of an expert. Just kidding.
Did you do community theater?
I was Harold Hill in The Music Man, I'd like to tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you sing?
Yeah.
I can't sing. I can't
That's
sing
okay.
at all.
Yeah, I can't act and I can't dance. I was kind of a one like a what is it, like a one threat? What is it?
Did
What are
you
they?
have to learn how, or did it just come naturally to you?
Singing? Um, Naturally, I think. Yeah, I mean, I would just listen and sing along to things, and then I taught myself how to play guitar and how to play piano, and so that's music is a very big but private part of my of my life for sure.
Now that I've brought it up on a YouTube video with 80 million people. But I think it's very, very cool. I envy people that are musically inclined. Um, I think it's a great skill to have. So you're writing, you've written the second book in this
Hmm.
series. Are you going to continue writing thrillers and become
Yeah,
the most
I
prolific thriller writer in your generation?
what's that?
And become the most prolific thriller writer in your generation?
Again, there are things that I can control and things that I cannot control. I can control whether I'll write another thriller or not. And the answer is yes. I'm bleeding all over a first draft that will continue the Emma Noble story. So that arc, her arc, will continue. But I would like to do other things, and yeah, I might resurrect one of those novels that I put away now that I know what I'm doing. Maybe I'll try something else. I think it would be fun if it's at all possible to be able to write a book have one book come out every year and a half, or two books come out every. I'm sorry, two books come out every year and a half, so that that I can satisfy the demand and also keep my agility with writing other things, strong. I know that the people that have read Fortunate Son and A Noble Sin are very excited about whatever Emma gets up to next. But I think there's also a part of me that would like to dive into places that I haven't been yet. And I don't know what those stories would look like, um, but I feel like if I can try to come out with two books a year, that would be amazing. It's a lot of work, and maybe I won't, but eventually that's a goal. I mean, I'm not 32, so I gotta get cracking now that I figured out what I want to be when I grow up.
Well, actually, I was just saying, MC Beaton she wrote the Hamish Macbeth series and the Agatha Raisin series, and I am not. Hamish Macbeth, I watched like the TV shows when I was in America, wanting desperately to live in the UK. But I am not I don't listen to comfy cozy. I like things more edgy and hard edge. And Agatha Raisin are comfy cozy thrillers set in the Cotswolds. But I think I'm not sure, but I think she might be on like 30 series book 34 or something in Agatha Raisin, 28 or 34, whatever. I've I'm on my fifth time listening to it, to all of them, and I mean the actress is one, Penelope Keith. It's just, I mean, she's amazing. But I listen every night when I go to sleep to MC Beaton. But she
Mm.
started when she was really old. I don't want to say how old, but I think
Yeah,
not.
because we need to define what really is these days,
No, I
because
know.
I don't want to be in the really com column.
I think we're talking. How old was MC Beaton? I think she was at least really old, and it's like younger than I am now, is
That's what I
probably
was worried you were going to say. Yeah.
because when I first started like reading her, I was young. MC Beaton when she started. I think she was like, because she was working in admin as a secretary at like a police
Mm.
like the police
Fantastic.
station or something when she started writing. Um I don't normally do this. This is gonna look lovely on the video, I
Well, that's
guarantee.
okay. You can tell readers in the comments how old she was, but I'll turn 60 this year, so
Okay,
um I
so yeah,
my
so that's what I
window
thought. She didn't even start writing. She wasn't as old as I thought. I thought she was at least in her 60s. She didn't even start writing until she was in her 40s. And that's
very old then,
writing.
huh?
No, but that's writing. That's not selling. That's not
Yeah, yeah.
selling. And keep in mind, she just died recently in like her 80s, and she wrote like 34 episodes of that. And she wrote the Hamish Macbeth series, which is famous as well. But I think that's, and she wrote like two a year or something just for the rest of her life. So yeah, so don't quote me on that because I'm not saying 40s is really old because some of us are really old compared to that. But when I first
Yeah,
started listening, I was like in my 20s. So when you're in your 20s, you think, oh, there's hope for me yet.
yeah. Well, it is funny um to, when you're young and you hear about somebody painting a picture, painting a beautiful something at 80, and or writing their first book at 60. You're like, good for them, good for that old person. It's somehow not as cool to be the old person who came out with the debut novel. It's fine, but I know that there are probably 20-year-olds going, oh, good for that old guy, good for him. What
Actually,
I'm
I
kind of
had
thinking.
this conversation with someone because I'm surprised that I'm this person, but I really am. I had this conversation with someone. I thought that getting older would bother me more, and it bothers some of my friends. And I had a conversation the other day, and they were like, "Well, going back to school because my plan has always been that when I'm like properly older, like 70s, I say that now. When I'm 70s, I'm gonna be like, that's not old." But when I'm like in my 70s, I'm gonna start acting again
Mm,
because my theory is the competition will be dead. And I'm not going to have to run around competing with a bunch of like young blondes.
is that the
All I
message?
have
We
to,
just have to wait out the competition, just
yeah,
live a
well,
little
that is
longer.
honestly my plan. And I don't see anything wrong with that because to me it shows resilience and fortitude. I am going to, because when I'm 70, all I have to do is act. Plus, everyone will think I'm so inspiring because Daniela Acitelli started acting seriously when she was 70. I'll be like the thing of memes. But not only
That's
that, and I've literally started like going back into acting, joining the spotlight again. And I was talking to my friend about it. And she said, oh no, I really wanted to go back to school, but I don't want to be the old person that everyone's laughing at. I'm like, why would they laugh? Like, I don't care. I just don't. I When I first started narrating, and I'd had a massive corporate job at an oil company for my sins. And I thought, well, I'll just get a part-time job while I'm narrating, right? Until someone pointed out to me, you're not making any money and you need to be spending your time doing your actual job. But I was at a salon and they were all like, I'm sure, like maybe 18. Okay, blasting 80s music all day might have gotten on their tits, but the rest of it, I think they loved me. So
you know what it
it's
was
in your
you.
head.
Playing squeeze on end for young people, that gets you to heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a
What?
community service. Playing squeeze, playing 80s
Oh,
music,
yeah, yeah.
talking heads for young people. That's you're doing
Yeah,
them a favor.
customers all day. No, but okay, granted, there were a few jarring moments. I made a reference to Bridget Bardot, and nobody had ever heard of her.
Yeah.
But it can't really bother you because like you get to this stage and it's like we're healthy, we've got it figured out.
No, I'm probably in a better place than I've ever been in my entire life.
Exactly.
I'm very, very happy with with all of the decisions that I thought were, going to ruin us or whatever. I mean, I get to write. My brain gets lit up. Whether it is super successful financially or not super successful financially, I'm not asking my writing to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
You do the math. You start
And
doing
what's
the math.
Yeah,
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. You start doing the math and you realize how much time you have left, and you're like, might as well have fun.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I've got I spend all day with a character who is in her 20s, and who is eerily similar to my daughter, who, with her personality traits and those kind of things. So, you know, it is kind of nice to be so in touch with my daughter-in-law and my daughter to be able to to see how they're touching the world and what matters to them, and maybe overlaying some of the trials that I've been through, and then you can kind of make an authentic character. when I started writing, and this is a complete diversion from what your question was, but
I
when
love diversions.
you're 58 or 59 years old and you're going to try to write and be in the head of a 20 something young woman, that could be fraught with could be problematic, but it ended up that, at first Emma Noble, who this whole series is based on, was not even in the book. I just needed my grizzled FBI guy to have somebody to talk to. And I thought, well, what's the opposite of a grizzled FBI veteran? It's going to be a woman who is a rookie FBI agent who's just starting. So that will be how they will oppose each other in different worldviews and that kind of stuff. And then she opened her mouth and she sounded a lot like my daughter, who I find hilarious and courageous, and who was also green and naive and struggling to find her voice in the world. And it felt very natural to write this character who kind of embodied all of those things. So that's the answer to the question you didn't ask.
But the answer to the question we all wanted to know, because that's a really good point. The people that are worried about, oh, I'm not going to go back to school, or I'm not going to do this because what if younger people judge me, or what if people think this? They're separating themselves from possible future friends, from their things about 20-year-olds that I have a lot in common with. My immaturity at times, one of them, but and I think when we isolate ourselves, we cut those things. We all know the retired couple that keep to themselves and only age appropriate lives. I think when you start acting old, you become old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad's 84, and his phrase, I think he got it from Clint Eastwood, which is "Don't let the old man in." And I love it. Don't let the old man in.
I love that.
He's knocking, but you don't have to let him in.
I've literally already planned my wardrobe for my 70-year-old me. I have. She is going to knock people out. I can't wait. I'm so looking forward to it. Okay. Tell me, we don't have much time left, but I'm dying to find out. Do you sit at a big desk at the same time every single day and write a certain amount of words and have coffee in a certain cup? What rituals, or do you have any rituals? And how do you make sure to get in and write when you're staring down the barrel of a blank page?
Yeah, I could talk a long time on all these things. I think I have a place above the garage, which I'm in right now, which is kind of my private space. I've got a piano over here, and I've got my guitars over there, and I've got my writing desk in the corner, and I've got this nice recliner. And I'll spend 10 hours up here a day, maybe sometimes more. But for fortunate son, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning. I would get a cup of coffee, and then I would write until about noon or longer, and then I would.
Why 4:30? I'm not a morning person.
Because I am a morning person. My brain really only works from 4:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then after that,
Wow.
So, but my circadian rhythm is usually earlier.
Okay.
And I have no nightlife. So, it's I live a very boring life.
What time do you go to sleep? If you don't mind me asking.
9:30, 10 usually.
Gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
So is it still dark at 4:30?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I see the sun come up every day. And then when I'm done writing, I'll sit in the recliner, sometimes smoke a cigar, but I will generally have smooth jazz playing, and I will stare at the wall trying to figure out what happens tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, writing is a series of making thousands and thousands and thousands of small decisions, from what's the weather going to be like, where are you going to put this scene, who's going to be in it, what are they going to talk about, how are you moving the ball forward, what tension is there, what like there are so many different things, and there's as a thriller writer and as a discovery writer, I don't really know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. I kind of have the spine of where the story is going to be, but I don't really know exactly where it's going to be, and I let characters talk and maybe guide me a little bit. But
So is it,
yeah,
they call
so
it pantser? I think I've heard them say pantser. Is that what it
so
is?
I probably shouldn't say what I defined myself is, because there are outliners and there are pantsers. And I told somebody that I'm a pantsy liner because I do both. And I believe that I wasn't helpful for what people thought of me. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, I would call
Not good
myself,
branding.
yeah, no, that's probably not going to go on the website. Yeah.
Do you drink coffee?
Lots of it.
Black?
Lots of it. I've got a great Italian espresso maker where I make Americanos. I do a 4-shot Americano in the morning, and then I come back and reload later on in the late morning.
I would expect nothing less from a proper thriller writer. The cigar was the icing on the cake. The
I'm trying
cigar
to cut
dripping.
down. I'm trying to cut down on the cigars. I was smoking about 2 a day, and then I think that might not help me because I want to start in the play with you at 70. So I've got to do better. But the yeah, so now we're cutting down on that, but it's still, there's a lot of staring at the wall that goes on. But I I'm kind of that guy I told you at 10 years old, that I was a dreamer. I still am. I love to create little worlds in my head and people, and then try to figure out how they all move and interact with each other. And there's a creative aspect, but there's also an analytical aspect to writing. And I feel like my brain kind of does both of those things. So like with Fortunate Son, it was going to happen over 14 days. And I decided, well, maybe I can make it happen in 9 days. And then I thought, well, maybe I can just make it happen in 6. So I'm building spreadsheets to try to determine, okay, where's this character on this day, and how do I get him over to here, and how many. So it becomes this. It's not trying to figure out the best word for what's going to go in that sentence. It is a deep dive analytically to try to move people in places. And so the whole process of writing, you can probably tell, it gets me excited. It's fun. But the blank page is no fun. But a lot of times, if I'm struggling with writer's block, it usually means I've messed up something behind me. It's not the problem. What happens in front of me is not where the problem is. It usually is something that is untrue that I wrote before.
But the spreadsheet, I've got to tell you, and we're talking over 275 books now, and I've read thrillers obsessively for as long as I was able to read. And I won't give any spoilers. There's one part in your book that I did not see coming. Shocked me. I did not see it coming. I didn't think I could be shocked like that still in my
Yeah,
old
that's
age.
cool.
But yeah.
That's cool. That makes me happy. Well,
Yeah.
and a lot of those shocks, I'll be honest, they surprised me when I thought of them as much as they did you. Because again, as a discovery writer, all of a sudden, you're staring at the wall, smoking a cigar, and you're like, "Holy shit, that could
Yeah,
happen!" And then
exactly.
you run
Yeah.
over. Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it wasn't going to go that way, but it did. And it can't be undone. It's
Right,
like
right, 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 right. I think I
so
know which one you're talking about.
so you're writing happily away. I mean, I do. I'm tempted to like, okay, I've got to let him off the call because he's got to get busy writing. But do you dream about your books ever, your characters? Have you ever had a dream about your characters?
Uh, I don't dream about that I'm in the story, but I usually, when I go to sleep, it's what I'm thinking about when I go to sleep, and it's the thing that I think about when I wake up. And I know that it's what I didn't know when I first started, was that if I'm in a problem with a book, that I would try to write my way through it. when I just needed to live with it for a little bit. My brain will come up with what it's supposed to, but sometimes it just takes a little while. Um, so sleeping on a problem, you know, or for a week or for just a little while, it's amazing how your brain kind of moves things. But I don't dream about it, but I know that in my subconscious, I'm working those things out because, and the problems usually are things like I've put my character in a place that they can't get out of. And I do not want to ever do, play tricks, like suddenly the mouse, bit through their binds and the trap door was right below the
Yeah,
chair and
because
like just like
readers are smart and they
you
don't
can't
like
do
it.
that.
Yeah.
So, really
You
spending a
feel
lot of time like
cheated.
how, yeah, no, you don't
You
want
feel
that.
cheated
Yeah.
when something like
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah. So that's I spend a lot of time trying to putting myself into ridiculous places with what I've done. And I'm very proud of it when I do it, but then I have no idea how I'm going to get myself out of it.
I love it. I do. Okay. Now, this unfortunately is unavoidable. This is the question I ask everyone. And in your case, it'll be for, oh, good point. Jonathan wants to know, how long does it take you to write a book? Beginning to end.
I wish I had. I mean, if I had like the first one took it took 3 years to get a book finished, but it took me a year when I started that one, and I would say it took the better part of a year the second time. I'd like to think that um, it won't take as long now that I know what I'm doing, but I also it's hard because you have a bar that you want to, if you're going to put your name on something, you want it to be good enough. um
Especially a
so
series, you don't want the last book to be, you want it to be as good as the first book.
yeah, I think that the thing that I'm struggling with right now is that the first book nobody was watching, and the second book I didn't have it, the first book wasn't published, so nobody's watching, and it's just me dancing in the room by myself. Now it's people are like, hey, when's the second one coming out? Are you writing the third one? What's going on? And it's like, oh shit, people are
Yeah, we like, I
like
have to know what
I
happened.
don't want to screw this up. So I think to answer your question, Jonathan, I think it's it it if I write 1,000 words a day, by rights it should take me 90 days to do the first draft, and then it should take another 90 to 150 days to do all the other drafts. It's very, you should be able to write one fairly quickly. But what I do and what I've done on this one, I started in October and I wrote the beginning of 3 different books and I didn't know which book I was going to write and I kept waiting. So now we're in February and I finally have figured out what book I'm going to write, and now we're starting over again. So it's already been 120 days and I've got not much to show for it. So if I was smarter, it wouldn't take as long, but I'm not. I keep learning the same lessons over and over again, but it's the process, it is
You
what
know
it is.
what? I can correlate that to narrators because, and I can say this, Jonathan will know exactly what I'm talking about. You know exactly how many words per minute you read. You narrate. You know exactly how much time that takes in the booth. You know exactly how to like compensate if it's nonfiction or, but if your heart gets broken, if something emotionally happens, if you're worried and it was really important to you that you impress someone, somehow, magically, that number inflates. And it's like and it must be the same even more so writing, because like the way you feel about what you're doing and being in your mind, wouldn't that, it
No, you're
emotion
right.
take
You're
time.
right. I think the thing that I've learned though is to be a little gentler with myself. I was in business, everything else. I ran to deadline. I mean, I was always under pressure, always, and I bring some of that to my writing of I need this deadline, I need this, and I think you have to have a little bit of that because it is so without having minding yourself and what you need to get done, it's very easy. Just I'll do it tomorrow. But there are times now that it's a great writing day, and I'll write 3,000 words, and then there'll be days where, um, like we just became grandparents for the first time, and we get the
So
call.
beautiful.
It's like great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going. You know.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that makes you a good. I'm very type A, and I'm not 100% not proud of myself for that book I narrated the day after I fractured my knee, my ribs, and my shoulder, and I narrated standing on one leg with
oh,
just an Amazon bought brace.
oh
I'm
no.
the type A corporate girl in me is quite proud
Yeah.
of myself that I did it. But the narrator in me knows you would get more done faster if you let yourself breathe and take care of yourself and do those things and
Yeah.
you get more done. Jonathan says, so I've got another question from Jonathan, a quick one, and then I've got one last question for you. Jonathan says, do you write or type?
Um, both. I so sometimes, I'll just freehand cursive write out the chapters. Sometimes I'll type them, and sometimes then what I'll do is, whether I've written it freehand, I will then go and type out what I did, or if I've typed it, I'll write it freehand. Sometimes, whatever reason, it feels like something new and familiar. If I change it up, it's easier to type for sure, and it's easy because that will get into the Scrivener format that I need it to be. But I'm for Fortunate Son, I've got a box someplace in the garage that it's reams and reams of handwritten stuff, that first draft. So I don't think I think that sometimes writers get, or new writers, like, okay, what is that person's process and what is that person's process, thinking that that is the key to it, and it's not. It's just whatever works for you that day. And I get a nice pen, I'm going to write on my with my nice pen, until the ink goes out, and then I'll just start typing again, until I order something again from Amazon. I don't hold out for too many of those
Yeah,
the quirks of writing.
I'm a
Yeah.
sucker when I hear them, because I read somewhere that like when you freehand write, you're tapping into a part of your like creative brain that you're not tapping into when you type. I can't stand it. My hand cramps up. It annoys me. It takes too long. I'm impatient. And so I just like finally come to the realization I can't do all those 8 zillion hacks to live a better life that I keep hearing about, like breathe this way, right? But
Well,
but
the writing freehand, the reason it's helpful is that um, it's a great way just to get the idea on a page, because I've got an internal editor that is constantly criticizing everything that goes on the page.
oh,
And if you're typing, it's very easy to delete that, or to rework that paragraph and keep playing with it. When you're writing freehand, it's much easier, just because you don't really have the luxury. You might cross out a word or whatever else, but you're in the flow a little bit more, I think, sometimes than you could be with a typewriter. But that's or with a computer, I guess.
okay. For any writers that are going to be watching this, or narrators, but mostly writers, do you have, or narrators, human beings, for anyone that's going to watch this video, if they could take anything away from this call at all, one piece of advice, something you'd like to leave them with in 100 years if they happen to catch this on YouTube, what would you like to say to them?
Oh God, I'll be dead then, right? That sucks.
Well,
I don't just
we
want to
never know.
let's just sit with that for a second.
They could
All
come up
right.
with a cure.
Boy, that's a kind of a well, you know what? It would be a bigger question if I was a well-known, respected person. But I will say
You're
this is
going
that
to be, you
okay,
could be at the time they're
that's it.
watching this.
That's it. Um, I, Try to be happy. We I don't know. I think that we let life move us around a lot. And I think if you can try to find joy in something and be optimistic, probably the most important thing, I guess, would be relationships. Is if you can cultivate good relationships, then that gives you meaning. It's not how much money you have or anything else. It's the relationships that you develop, whether it's a spouse or if you can keep good relationships with your kids and grandkids and have a community of friends. You don't have to have a ton of them, but I think relationships are the key to being happy, right? So I don't know. I guess that would be my advice is spend as much time as the time that you spend concerned about what life's bringing you tomorrow, maybe spend an equal amount of time cultivating the relationships and being optimistic about things. And if you have the ability to be curious and dive down rabbit holes and to dig for buried treasure in your backyard, to see what you find, that's pretty cool life too.
And extra stars if you write a best-selling novel for your wife. I mean, most romantic gesture on earth. So yeah.
Well, I got a pretty amazing partner there, so she deserves every bit of it. It's nice. I have to say that too because we've kind of one person takes the lead through our whole 32 years of marriage. Sometimes one person's the breadwinner, so she is kind of my sugar mama right now. So I've got to really be nice to her. So I kind of thought, well, we won't call it retirement. We'll call it that I'll be an author and I'll write her a book. And she bought it hook, line, and sinker. So it worked out great.
That's the best. I look at people because I think we've been married like 100 years now. I mean, a really, really long time. And it's the best. That's to me the most romantic thing at all. I look at people in like dating shows and people in like angsty relationships. I just love the like you just had the same fights a million times. It's just you just don't can't be bothered to
We
argue.
we we're children. Like we argue over the dumbest stuff. Like the most child. Like our kids are like, "What are you guys?" But we get very heated about dumb stuff. What temperature the cookies should be could be. What the oven should be. What temperature of the oven to make the cookies. But we've never, I don't think, had an argument or clashed about the things that were most important about how we wanted to raise kids or any of those kind of things. So we the steam comes off the kettle pretty quick with some of our stupidity, but for the
Yeah,
most
but
part,
that's
I mean,
the
we're
dynamics of the relationship
yeah.
because
Oh, it's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And you
I can't. I've never won an argument in 32 years.
I mean, I told someone the other day, I said, well, because when you're watching TV and your husband starts talking, so you put the subtitles on and you can just nod and they looked horrified. They looked really horrified. Like, was she treated for but like seriously, he's deaf in one ear, and that's the ear that I talk into. So like, how do you think we've stayed together for so long?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I to say things to get a rise out of her, and she's just completely immune. Like anything, like I think that I'll be really like obnoxious, and she doesn't even emote. Like whatever.
you got to have a sense of humor. You got occasionally I'll say, "You love me, right? I'm the best of a bad lot," and he'll go, "Yeah," and then we're fine.
That's
I
awesome.
wouldn't go back to
Yeah.
20 if for all the gold in the world.
No, my daughter's 28, and she's actually gonna be in England for a couple months this coming year, and then I think her plan is to move. So I might have her contact you, so she's got a friend in the area. But
Yes, I will
um,
give her
but yeah,
advice.
but being single and in New York and just hearing what dating is like on apps and texting, and I mean, I met my wife at a rugby bar in Peoria, Illinois. That was how I thought you're supposed
Yeah,
to
we
meet
were at a
your.
bar too, drunk. Like, I can't
Yeah.
imagine meeting someone not at a bar
Well, I
drunk.
mean, look at this. I mean, you've got to have a couple cocktails.
Yeah, he was hitting up my little sister. If
That's
so,
awesome. I'm sure you haven't let him forget that.
No, 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 no. Neither has she.
So funny.
Thank you so much for taking your time. It's been a wonderful call, and and thank you so much for reaching out to me that day. It will go down in
Oh,
history as one of my
that was
all-time
the
faves.
best thing I've done, and it gives me something. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you do with A Noble Sin that comes out in the beginning of August. We're getting close. I'll get you the manuscript when I've got it all. I think they're proofreading it now, so
When you
hopefully it
listen to the
meets.
sample, I did a little happy dance because that's the moment. You never know if they're going to like it or not. And normally you're like, if they don't, then I wasn't meant for it. But sometimes you really want them to like it.
Oh, it was awesome. I was so excited. So, and I remain excited. And and to all the narrators out there, what you do is seriously, it's a huge gift to the reader and but especially to the writer. It's a really cool thing. So, um, and there's a lot of creativity and choices that you guys make, and so straight A's across the board for Fortunate Son. I thought it was amazing. So I hope that everybody gets a chance to hear what you did on that.
Yeah, when we work together, writers and narrators, it can be amazing. When we
Yeah.
work together well, when you find, and you will find for narrators out there, you will find the writers that you're meant to work for. There will be, because when they start, they go through a lot of angst, learning boundaries, and but you will find your flow and you'll get to know, and you become friends, you know.
Well, I promise that I made you speak a dead language in the first book. I won't do that to you in A Noble Sin. I promise.
It's okay. Nothing will phase us.
Well, I
Thank you
enjoyed it.
so
Thank
much.
you. All
Thank
right.
you, Andrew. Bye,
We'll talk
Jonathan. Bye,
soon.
everyone. Mwah! See you guys later. Bye. Bye.